Like you wouldn't drop your child off at a mall, very young, alone, and say like, hey, good luck, I'll pick you up in 2 hours.
Yes. Yeah.
But we'll hand a smartphone to a 7-year-old, and we don't know what in the world they're doing. And so just
welcome again to our Radiant Family Moment. We are so excited, Carmela and I, and Pastor Manny, to have these moments with you. On behalf of Pastor Todd and Kelly, thanks for joining us. We're thrilled to have these times where we can partner with you as you raise passionate followers of Jesus that impact our world. And we're so thrilled to have author and national speaker Arlene Pellicane here with us. And we've already had one segment where we had a great conversation about screens and how it affects our brains. Today, we get to go a little further and talk about emotional health and safety. Arlene, thank you so much for being here.
It's great to be with you guys. Thanks for having me.
So we're going to talk about, well, how screens affect us emotionally, our emotional health. And when we talk about safety, what are we talking about? There's a whole new world that our kids have stepped into.
Yeah. It's interesting because we think, oh, let's give them the phone so they'll be more safe. Because we'll think, oh, that way they'll have a phone with them. And if they go out to a friend's house, we know how to find them. If they're out and about, we know how to find them. And so we have this feeling of safety, and we've heard about stranger danger, and we've heard these things, so we want them to have it. But we also have to realize that, okay, there is a safety component, but there's also something that's making them very unsafe, and it's the idea of what could they access on this phone, and who can access them through this phone where, you know, if they didn't have the phone, they wouldn't have a highway to your child. And so if you do feel like you need a phone to keep your child safe, then I would really recommend just getting a dumb phone that just texts. So your kid, you know, your kid can hide it so that no one knows that they don't have a smartphone, but they can then still text you and call you, because what, you know, obviously when people think safety, they think, okay, a child predator, they think pornography, and those things are very real. And it's really important, even with your young kids, even with really, it's so sad that you have to talk to really young kids now about this, but have those conversations so that the first time, let's say, you catch your child and they have viewed porn, and if that's the first time you're ever having a conversation about sex, they're going to be like, what's this all about? We've never talked about this before. I don't want to talk about this with you, and how come this is coming out of nowhere? And so those conversations about sex, about pornography, so that your kids are wiser. So if they do get propositioned online, which 1 out of 5 girls on social media, and we're talking 10-year-olds, 11-year-olds, 12-year-olds, 1 out of 5, they're going to receive almost immediately of, you know, creating a social media account, things from adult men posing as other people that are going to be like, hey, you're so pretty. Because you wonder, how do kids fall prey to this? You know, it's not like they just come on the first time and it's like, hey, send me this picture, you know, but it's, hey, you're so pretty. What are you like? What do you like? And they're nice and they're friends. Oh, I think you should be a model. Wow, you know, oh, well, I'd like to meet you, and I think you're beautiful. And now they have this connection with you. So it's really important to see that this is why. You know, there's these statistics, 22%, so it's 1 out of 5 of teen girls say that they've posted nude or semi-nude photos or videos of themselves online. This is called sexting. It's a crime, and it's a way for kids to be manipulated, because obviously once they've sent that photo, then they can be manipulated. We're going to share this with your school. We're going to send this to your parents. We're going to shame you. And then all of a sudden this girl is trapped and she doesn't know what to do. So it's really important as parents, even that you say, hey, honest, if this ever happens and you have this conversation with your tween or your teen, if this ever happens to you, please come talk to us. We will not be upset at you. We will want to help you, and you're not going to get in trouble. Like, please come talk to us. So have that open atmosphere, you know, that kids feel like they can come to you. 70% of kids 7 to 18 have accidentally encountered online porn, often through web searches while doing homework. And so really teach your kids, you know, hey, if you see something, you can come to me. You know, you don't have to be embarrassed. Like, obviously that's so embarrassing. But because what's so dangerous about porn is, of course, like, you should be interested in those things because, you know, you wouldn't be breathing right? If you're not interested in
Yes.
seeing these things. So, and that is a beautiful thing that God created, but it's
Absolutely.
completely distorted.
That's good.
And it's
Yes.
harmful and destructive. And if your child starts looking at porn, then they're going to start feeling ashamed about that. And then they're going to be ashamed about their body and about their future sexual relations with a spouse in the future. And it really just introduces a lot of destruction and harm. So to show your kids and with your older kids, really talk about that, hey, sex is a wonderful,
Yes.
awesome thing. But if you come into it with these false expectations, if you come into it with having addictions, like it's really gonna mess you up.
Yeah.
And so we really wanna help you to see that danger and to help you, because when it all comes down to it, you as a parent, you can put every filter in place, you can do everything in place and do it all right, and your kid in this day and age can still find a way around it. They might see it at a friend's house, they might see it through a friend's phone. So it's really that, as much as now I'm not saying don't put the filters. Yes,
Right.
put the filters, be aware of what your kid is doing. So yes, do those things, but it's not foolproof, and it really is the state of your child's heart to prepare your child's heart to do battle in this area and to really see that it is destructive to them. And just don't be, and I'll tell you, I have a 16-year-old boy, and these are like really, he doesn't want to talk to me about this. Like, why would he want to talk to me about this?
Mom.
You know, so we'll say, once in a while, say, hey, you know what? There's a lot more temptation for you.
Yes.
And it's just like these really short things.
Yes.
Because no boy wants to talk for 10 minutes with his mother about pornography, right? So I'll just try to do these really short things like, hey, you know what? But, it's so much harder for you than it was for your dad, because your dad had to find a magazine, he had to bury it in the backyard, and he had to go look at it, But for you, it's so easy.
Yes.
It's everywhere. YouTube, anywhere you look,
Yes.
you could find it. So we understand that, and we're just like rooting for you, because pornography is really harmful. It's going to mess you up with your marriage, and that's it.
Yeah.
And so we, just once in a while, we're dropping in these messages, we're talking about it, but I try not to make it too long, because then they're like, oh, please.
Once you
stop
see the
talking.
awkward look on
Yeah.
their
Like,
face,
no
you know that's
more.
probably
Please
stopping
stop
you.
talking.
But kids have that natural curiosity.
Yeah.
And so to talk about it and have those healthy conversations
Yes.
of saying, this is what God made, He
Yeah.
made us. But the internet and the phones we were talking about, adults, we use those as a tool to help us, find somewhere if we're driving somewhere, or email or whatever like that. But kids look at that tool and go, what can this do?
Right.
And they just explore. Like even one time, one of our daughters grabbed my phone and was like, oh, Mom, did you know you could change the ring sound and do all these things? And I was like, I had no idea,
Totally.
all these Bitmojis and stuff. But they are searching for it. So it's best that we are having that open communication.
Like
all
you
the
wouldn't
time.
drop your child off at a
Yes.
mall, very young, alone,
Right.
and say like, hey, good luck, I'll pick you up in 2 hours.
Yes. Yeah.
But we'll hand a smartphone to a 7-year-old, and we don't know what in the world they're doing.
Yes.
And so just to see it that way,
good.
that it really could introduce some things that you never meant to introduce.
Yeah.
So you mentioned pornography, which I think is, when we talk about safety, is probably the thing that we all think of first.
Yeah.
Yes.
But you list a few other things, and you alluded to the predator side. I think it's an important conversation for parents to know, because I think it's one of those things that this will happen to somebody else, but it'll never happen to me.
Yeah.
And recognizing that this is a doorway, that device is a doorway that really allows things in, and we have to be mindful of it. Can you talk about that predator side?
Yes, and because you think like, oh, when you hear about a child having this relationship with a predator, oh, this must be someone who doesn't have a loving family. This must be someone who's completely alone all the time, And the truth is, when you hear these stories, there'll be people like our neighbors that are from these normal families, and it begins very innocently of just what we kind of alluded to before. Hey, you're so beautiful, and it's these girls, and they're just looking for a little bit of attention, and they get connected with someone, and then before you know it, there's a relationship there. There's like a loyalty there, and they don't know everything. The wisdom isn't there, because let's say it used to be you could judge someone by their body language, the way they looked, the way you felt when you were around them, and a child could kind of be like, you're not really a safe person. But now kids are so used to everything being online. They're texting their friends, they're looking at social media, they're in video games, so the whole world is online. So how do they tell the difference between a real stranger that really means well for them You know, like, hey, I'm in your biology class and wanted to get to know you better, like a real person that's really good versus like a really creepy, awful person.
Yeah.
You know, how do they tell from this little text of line that just says, what are you doing tonight?
Yeah.
They can't tell.
Yeah.
So just realizing they don't have the tools to discern, like, is this a dangerous person? Is this a safe person?
Yeah.
And by the time they're weeks and weeks in to having a texting relationship, social media relationship with someone, and then they say, hey, I really like you. Send me a picture.
Wow.
You know, they're like, hey, and if you don't send me the picture, I guess we're not gonna be friends anymore. Then they feel invested, like, I don't wanna lose this person in my life. And so then, of course, you have all this manipulation. You know, I know someone in our school district, a really good family, but she fell into this. And so you then have this picture that a person can use against you. So she was getting really bullied at her school. So they moved her to a different school. But guess what? Now, because it's online, that all followed her to the other school because that predator could follow her to that school. So that's the thing where you used to maybe have a bully that you'd face at school and then you'd go home and you'd be safe.
Wow.
And now whether that bully is a peer or it's someone older being predatorial towards you, that's in your pocket. And you're looking at it all the time.
Yeah.
And that's why I say, hey, it's safer for my young children, tweens, teens, to go out into the wild world without a phone. And, you know, if they get in trouble, all they have to do is ask their friend, hey, can I text my mom? But, you know, it's not
'Cause all
like,
their friends have a
it's not
phone.
like they have to, like, find a phone. All they have to do is turn around and be like, dude, can I use your phone? I feel like that's much safer going out into the world that way than going out into the world. And so much of interaction is happening online and so much danger to be introduced at a child who's not ready.
That's really good. It's important. There's so much that I want to talk about, and thankfully we have the book as a resource. You mentioned bullying and even giving away our information, but there's a physical part that this opens up too. You know, one of the things just, it sounds sci-fi, but radiation exposure and what these devices do to our kids physically.
Yeah, so there's so much that is not known. So there is radiation that comes from our devices. And you know, you've heard those things like don't stand in front of your microwave and things like that. And what's not known is, you know, when you're a fully formed adult, it doesn't seem to be a problem. But what about young children? And the idea is, what if a young child had the iPad or the phone under their pillow at night, right?
Which they do.
Which they do, under the pillow at night all the time, on their laps all the time. So those kinds of things are not quite known.
Right.
So even from a standpoint of, you know, I want to prevent, I don't want my child to have any kind of dangerous radiation. And of course, if your child is just using it a little bit, it's not going to be a big deal. Even putting an iPad on a desk or on a table, that helps so that it's not sitting, you know, on your child's lap all the time. And guess what? When it is on a table, then it's more like, okay, this is a little uncomfortable after a while, I should move on. Whereas when it's on their body, right? It's like another appendage on their body and it's always with them. Then even from a radiation standpoint, if it's under their pillow, if it's on their lap, if they're always holding it, what is that constant, you know, what is it doing? Could it cause cancer? Could it cause other things? We don't know. And so those things to be careful. But, you know, you think of your child's body and you think, oh, they're a child, they can handle it. But if they continue in this way, what's going to happen? So myopia, it's nearsightedness. So kids in East Asia, 80 to 90% of them are more likely today to be nearsighted than, you know, 20 years ago. And why is that? It's because of this.
Wow.
It's because of they're gaming, they're looking at the screen, they're here all the time. And so they are literally wiring their eyes when something's closer. Your eyes do it. You know, put your hand closer to you, your eyes kind of go inward like this, and it's straining your eyes. So if your children are growing up and they're looking at screens, so even watching like a flat screen TV from far away would be better than a child with an iPad real close, because you're supposed to be, I think, 16 inches, your eyes from the device. But think of kids, their arms are very short. So they're like at full extension, right? And they still can't quite get it. So even thinking of that, just of the eyes. And what's the big problem is it used to be this TV in your house.
Yep.
And you could say, sit away from the TV.
Yes.
But now it's mobile. And are you constantly all day long going to be like, get that thing away from your face?
Yeah.
So that's a problem, because not only are they watching more, but there's a physical ramification of them watching so close. The ears, having those loud decibels, that kids are going to grow up, and when they're older, they're going to have hearing problems because when they were younger, they had their earbuds on. And, think of like a lawnmower or a rock concert. You can handle that for a little bit, but not all the time. And so if your kid has those earbuds on and they're listening, after 60 minutes, you want to tell them, hey, take those earbuds out, buddy. You've kind of had your decibel, dosage for the day, things like that. And again, with the eyes, another really good practical thing is 20-20-20, especially if we're in the online world. So we don't do this. So I'm going to confess to you right now, this is something we have to work on. Every 20 minutes, look away 20 feet away from your screen. So look at the mountains and do that for 20 seconds. And even by doing that, that will really help your eyes.
That's
so
good.
every 20 minutes, have your children, you can talk to them 20-20-20.
Yeah.
Every 20 minutes after a program ends, look somewhere else for 20 seconds, 20 feet away. And obviously it'd be nice if you just went away from the screen
Right.
completely.
That's good,
Go throw a ball around
Yeah.
and then return to the screen. If you're,
But
so
it's a
just
simple
think
rule.
of those
Yeah.
things. Yes,
That's
great.
20-20-20.
So great tool. Now, what about the emotions
Yeah.
that kids go through, and even parents
Yes.
of trying to deal with all
Yeah,
this?
this is a huge thing
Yeah.
because kids are so much more. They're reporting half of kids, and really they're young adults, 18 to 24, are reporting anxiety and depression. 1 out of 2 through this pandemic.
Wow.
That's a very high number. And you think about it, when you were 18 to 24, like this is the fun time in life. This
Yeah.
is when your back doesn't hurt and you still look really good. You're not struggling with weight. You're like having the time of your life. You're dreaming about your life. And so many young adults are struggling. And I think a lot of that has to do with the introduction of social media, of video games, of being more isolated, because you need people.
Yeah.
And kids aren't being connected to their parents and their families, because kids who are strongly affiliated with their family, so they feel like I'm on a team, I'm indispensable to this family, I'm important to this family, I'm close to my parents. We have dinner together, we have 7 meals a week together. If something's wrong in my life, I go to my parents. So if a child is growing up with that kind of emotional backbone, then when they go out into the world, they're more ready. It's ironic because the more bonded they are at home, the more ready they are to leave and be independent as an 18 to a 24-year-old, right? But you think the 18 to 24-year-old now, which is your child, believe it or not, in a few years, they're depressed, they're anxious because they don't know how to do that, because they're not securely bonded to their families. Instead, they are bonded to what they spend time with, which is the device. And so this is like a wake-up call for parents too, because if we think we're the ones, a lot of times it's the kids, they want to spend time with us, but we're on the device, and so they're not experiencing that closeness with their parents. So they find that closeness through achievement in video games, through status in social media, and that is, of course, very shallow and not a good emotional base. And obviously, if your child, Dr. Catherine Steiner-Adair, she's a psychologist that works with addiction a lot, and she says the girls, the patients that she sees, and these are our young girls, right, that are in youth group, the girls that she sees, they base their identity on how many likes they have, how many followers they have, and when that ebbs and flows, they're crushed, they're depressed, they don't know how to handle it. And so for kids, they emotionally need to get that center from God and from their families. And when that's not happening, they're growing up really anemic emotionally. And that's why we see so much need right now.
Yeah, that can feel overwhelming. And I appreciate that you gave some tools. And just to highlight them real quickly, you talked about the importance of conversation, the importance of community, and the importance of having meals together. As a tool to walk away with this segment, kind of on a high note, because this can feel very weighty, and it may feel like, what do? I already see this in my home. Arlene, those 3 things, I don't know if you can highlight that quickly, but
Absolutely. And to feel that hope of, hey, this is not as hard as we think. Let's have a meal together. And it's actually more important to have a simple meal, but enjoy it versus like a really complicated meal that you had to like cook and slave over for 2 hours. And you're finally like, phew, here's the meal. And then you're just exhausted. Hey, we're going to have macaroni, cheese, and broccoli. But we're not going to stress about it. The kids are going to be involved in the preparation, and we're going to talk and have that time. And studies have shown that, if you're having family meals together, so let's say 7 meals a week together, and those are times of conversation, those kids are less likely, dramatically less likely, to have substance abuse issues, to do poorly in school, to have sex before marriage, all these, to commit a crime. All those things are linked to simply having meals with your family together. So if you're on different schedules, my co-author of Screen Kids, Dr. Gary Chapman, he talked about when his son had all these different schedules. Sometimes dinner was at 8 o'clock at night, but they would make it work. And so have that as a starting point of, we're gonna have dinner together, we're going to do this. And then for your kids, like for instance, my daughter Noelle, she's a freshman in high school. Because of COVID, she's never even stepped onto our high school campus because we've been closed the whole time. So the entire 9th grade year has been online. And she does not have social media. And so you wonder, like, oh my word, how's that girl going to make it? But it's community.
Yeah.
So she goes to the park, usually every weekend, and hangs out for 2 hours with a friend. And that really helps her out. She has a group of friends from church. There's maybe 4 or 5 of them, and they might hang out once a month at somebody's house. And then they'll go to youth group twice a month. And so as these things open up, take advantage of them, because for your kids to see real people, like my daughter Noelle will say, Mom, I'd rather have one friend in real life, like sitting next to me physically, that's like, I like you, versus, all these followers on social media where you're not even sure, like, do they even like me?
Right.
So let your kids taste the real thing of community and being together, because they'll realize, oh, this is what really makes me feel healthy and emotionally secure.
That's really good. This has already been so good. And I want to thank you so much for joining us for this Radiant Family Moment. There is so much to unpack, and I'm excited about the segments that are coming as we talk about skills, A+ skills that we can give our kids in this environment. So this has been a great first 2 conversations regarding how screens affect our kids. Please be sure to join us. And we were so thankful to have Arlene come and join us for a weekend. You can check out that service at radiantchurch.org. And Arlene, you have resources online.
Yeah, so you can keep going with the Screen Kids book. There's a lot inside here. There's like a pledge that you can help your kids take, so when you do give that device, that they can talk about it. And so all of those suggestions and ideas are in Screen Kids, written with Dr. Gary Chapman, screenkidsbook.com. You can find me at my Happy Home podcast. That's every week. Wherever you're finding your podcast, look for Happy Home Podcast. And then I have online classes that you can always take to go deeper, and that's at happyhomeuniversity.com.
Thanks so much for being with us again for our Radiant Family Moment. We look forward to seeing you again next time. And we've got some amazing resources, so don't forget to check them out.